Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is Smoked Out MMA. This is my prediction video for UFC 294, Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira 2. Absolutely unreal pay-per-view event we got coming up on October 21st in Abu Dhabi for UFC 294. Lots of good fights from top to bottom. I'm going to give my predictions on 5 fights in this video. Basically the whole main card, the 5 fights that you see on your screen now. And getting closer to the event, I'll probably make another video breaking down another 5 fights. But let's get it started with the first one I'm going to break down. Shara Magomedov versus Bruno Silva. I won't take up a lot of time with my predictions on this one. We got Magomedov. This is his UFC debut against Bruno Silva, a UFC veteran. Magomedov, 11-0. Bruno Silva, 23-9. So Bruno Silva, he's on a bit of a skid right now. He's 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He lost his last fight against Brendan Allen. He got knocked, got choked out. He won his fight before that against Brad Tavares in the first round. It was impressive. And then before that, he lost to Meerschaert by choke. And then he lost that decision to Alex Pereira. Showed a lot of toughness, but still lost. But it was impressive. He went the distance with Pereira nonetheless. His opponent, though, Magomedov, this is his UFC debut. But from what I've looked up, I don't know a lot about him, but what I've been looking up, he seems like an absolute savage. Watched a few of his fights leading up to this. His last fight, he won in 8 seconds in the first round by knee. Seems like an absolute savage. He's from Russia. And you guys probably know these undefeated Russian fighters that come to the UFC. They have a history of doing quite well. But anyway, the UFC's not giving him an easy opponent for his debut. Bruno Silva's a veteran. Hits with a lot of power. But that being said, though, UFC's not doing Bruno Silva any favors. Him being on a bit of a skid, and they're feeding him to this prospect Russian that looks like an absolute psychopath coming into the UFC. So I'll be going with Magomedov on this one, especially if it gets to the ground. I can see it ending earlier within the distance. If it stays on the feet, could see a 3-round slugfest. But either way, going with Magomedov with the victory. Next fight, we got Ikram Aleskerov versus nassourdine Imamov. Aleskerov, another new UFC fighter from Russia. He's got 1 fight in the UFC. He beat Phil Hawes in the first round. Other than that, he's fought in Russia. He's only got 1 loss, and that's to Chimaev. Is that viral knockout Chimaev had with that uppercut. But either way, this Aleskerov guy, he's pretty good. He seems really good. He was scheduled to fight Paulo Costa actually before this, but that fight got canceled and switched up, and now he's fighting Imamov. Another Russian prospect getting into the UFC with and getting right in there, right into the contention. This guy's legit. He's 14-1. Imamov 12-4. Also, Aleskerov, he's got that win over Phil Hawes. Imamov lost to Phil Hawes. Imamov looked good his last fight at UFC 289. He was winning that fight before the accidental clash of heads. He's a good fighter. He went the distance with Sean Strickland. But I think he did. And also Imamov, he's a striker, so this will be the classic grappler versus striker matchup. Should be a good fight, though. I don't have too much of a breakdown on it. I mean, I don't know much about Aleskerov. He seems like a highly skilled Russian. So I'm just going to go with a quick prediction here. I'm going to go with the newcomer Aleskerov based on the grappling versus striker matchup. Unless Imamov gets submitted, though, I could see it go in the distance if it stays on the feet, or he doesn't get submitted. I can't see him getting knocked out. But either way, Aleskerov by decision. Next, we got Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. So this is an interesting fight. It's a good matchup. Magomed Ankalaev with the disappointing split draw in his title fight against Jan Blachowicz. Tough fight. He's going against Polish power, but I thought he was going to win that one. Johnny Walker, he's looked good in his last few fights. Decision victory over Anthony Smith, and he knocked out Paul Craig pretty impressively. He's had a bit of ups and downs in his career, but this will just be a stylistic matchup. Johnny Walker is mostly a striker, right? Big dude, 6'6", but Ankalaev, he's just so well-rounded. Another Russian combat sambo guy, can get it to the ground easy, has devastating ground and pound. So I think it's going to be basically decided on that factor. That if does Magomed Ankalaev get to the ground and ground and pound the shit out of Johnny Walker, or does it stay on the feet? Because if it stays on the feet, it can go either way. But on the betting aspect, if I'm looking for a clear-cut winner who I was going to pick, I'd be going with Ankalaev. It's kind of another grappler versus striker matchup. Usually the grappler usually takes that one. So, going to go with Magomed Ankalaev, probably by decision. If it doesn't go decision, he'll win by a TKO, ground and pound. Okay, getting into the good stuff now. The co-main event. This is the people's main event. I've been hearing around. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this fight. Probably, if I heard that this fight was announced, let's say they announced this at the beginning of the year in February, I would be waiting all year like it was Christmas to see this fight. It's going to be so sick. I think this is such a good matchup too, especially because Chimaev used to fight at 170. He was cutting a lot of weight. He's a big guy. He's massive. He could barely even get down to 170. Missed weight in his last fight, so he's probably a true 185er, to be honest. And then you got Costa. He's just like a brick. He's massive. Probably should be a 205er, the way that guy's built. Either way, we got an amazing fight here. I'd say it's hard to predict. I heard, I was listening to a video on Gilbert Burns predicting it, and I think he said it perfect. The way I visualize it is exactly how he said is, Chimaev comes with a lot of pressure, and Gilbert Burns was saying that it's going to be decided in the clinch. And if Chimaev can't get Costa down, then it'll be a striking battle. And and that's the tough thing to say because Costa he went up against Yoel Romero, who's Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, right? Chimaev, he's a Swedish national champion. So those two aren't even in the same conversation. But that being said, Chimaev, he's an unreal wrestler. He's super skilled. He does have knockout power. And the way I visualize this fight, it's just hard for me to say that Chimaev's going to go through or run through Costa, right? He went the distance with Gilbert Burns. He's 5'10", 170 pounds. He's a lot smaller than Costa. And, he's a lot more skilled, but he just doesn't have that crazy power like Costa, right? So that was a bit surprising, that fight, when Chimaev went the distance, and he was getting knocked in that fight. He got dropped, but he showed his toughness in that fight too. So it's really hard to say, but if I had to pick one, I'm going with Costa because I just can't see Chimaev just manhandling him to the ground like he did when he was in the welterweight division. I just can't see it. Yoel Romero couldn't get Costa down, and that's an Olympic gold medalist, and that's at 185. And Yoel Romero is a tank. Couldn't keep him to the ground. He got him down a couple times. Costa just popped right back up. Costa even reversed it a couple times. So I think this is going to be a straight up slugfest. And Chimaev, he's just got that right hook and right kick, and the straight kick up the middle, and he dominates with his grappling. Right, he dominates people in his grappling, and he's a big guy. So when he was fighting at 170, he was just manhandling these guys to the ground and just destroying them. that's the thing too, is like Holland, no wrestling experience. You just manhandle him, just drag him to the ground, no problem. And he's a small. When he fought at 185, he was small too, right? So, yeah, if it's just a striking battle, like I said, Chimaev, all he's got is the right hand, the right kick, the kick up the middle. So if it stays on the feet, I think Costa's got this all day. I can't say if it's going to be a knockout or not, but it's going to be a brutal fight. And yeah, I think Chimaev better hope he gets him to the ground and takes his back or something like that, because yeah, Costa's got a lot more power than Gilbert Burns. And if he fights anything like he fought against Gilbert Burns, he's getting knocked out. So this is my official prediction. This is what I will be betting on. I'm taking Costa. He's huge underdog. I think he's like close to 4-1. So the value on this is just massive. I mean, what's the point of putting any money on Khamzat? He's got good chance of losing. You know what I mean? It's not like such a lopsided fight, in my opinion, that the odds should be like that. So I'm going to be taking, obviously, Costa money line, and then I would even take him for a TKO or a knockout. So Costa for the win. And finally, the main event of the evening, the rematch between Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira. They're both 1-1 since they last fought. Islam Makhachev going the distance with Alexander Volkanovski, getting the decision win. Controversial decision win, if you ask me. And Charles Oliveira getting the first round TKO to Beneil Dariush at UFC 289. What a performance. I was there in attendance. It was probably the pinnacle of my life. Such a good time. Yeah, what a win by Charles. Definitely proof that he deserves this rematch. A little bit disappointing in these two fighters' first matchup. I thought we were going to see a lot closer match than what we did. I thought that Charles was the one that was going to be able to take out Islam and defend his belt, but we didn't see that. Good win by Islam, dominant performance. But I think it's different this time around. I think we're going to see a lot closer matchup, especially since Charles has been in there before with him. Now he's got the experience, and usually rematches definitely go a lot different for the most part. If Charles can keep it on the feet, it's going to be definitely a good fight. I mean, he's got that ground game. I think what happened in that first match is, I think he got knocked. He definitely got knocked and went to his back, and he got surprisingly submitted pretty quickly. But I think in that specific circumstance that he got, it was more that he was dazed and knocked, and that's why he got submitted, because in his previous fights before that, he got knocked and went to his back and was able to defend on the ground, because the fighters he was fighting didn't have the submission game that, of course, Islam Makhachev has, right? So the last thing I think Charles is going to want to do is get in that same position again, because Islam's so dominant in his submission and his ground game. And if Charles and Islam were to go in a grappling match, a lot of people say that, Charles would win that. Unreal grappling skills, most submissions in the UFC. You can't deny that. And then in that first fight, the fight with Beneil Dariush, his last fight there, first round, he spent the majority of it on his back. If you look closely, I did a short video on Charles defending off his back. He's just unreal off his back, barely getting hit, defending everything. Dariush couldn't do a single thing, barely even landed a punch. He was missing like crazy, couldn't get anything set up, and that's when he was just, not dazed and knocked, right? So I think if Islam had landed that punch in that first fight, I think it would have been totally different. I don't think he would have submitted Charles like he did, but props to him. But anyway, let's just get to the prediction here because there's not too much to break down. We know what happened in the first fight. Dominant win, second round finish for Islam. But I predict this rematch is definitely going to be a way more competitive matchup. It's going to be completely different. Charles has been there before. He knows what Islam is like now. He's fought against him. This is probably going to be his last, probably shot at fighting Islam, especially if he loses. So, yeah, I'm going with a bold prediction though on this one, and it's kind of a hope and a prayer. Don't get me wrong, but I'm going with Charles in this one. I predict if he can defend Islam on the ground, if it gets there, and he can keep it on the feet, I think Charles finishes him. I think he finishes him. You just never know in MMA. And Charles, he's got that crazy power, like Justin Gaethje said. Like he said when he got hit, he was like getting stung with put a battery on his tongue, right? And then look how knocked Dariush got. Like, he only got clipped a couple times, and then he was down, and he got finished quick. So, let's see it. I'm going for the underdog here. Let's go. Brazil, stand up. Let's go, Charles. Let's take this guy out. Charles, by finish, third round KO.